Cognition, visual perception and attention, processes in visual perception, and let's go all the way down to the two visual systems. This is where I want to be working today. So you can see I've got lots of different points already in here. This is from a book that I'm reading, which is this one, Cognitive Psychology, A Student's Handbook. It's very large, and I'm going to continue taking notes and try and understand what all of this stuff is talking about in this video, showing you how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it, and what I'm actually doing. Step 1, read the book and actually take some notes that I can process. The things in the highlights are actually references that I'm going to check on later. So, lots of spelling mistakes in there, as you can see. We've got one link to TMS. I may be linking some of these other points to other pages. So, for example, the double dissociation, which you can see here, is actually mentioned in my Approaches to Human Cognition, which I can open up now. The reason I may link it is because obviously the Approaches to Human Cognition is how we study the brain, and double dissociation, if I do forget in future, I want to be able to reference where it is. So if I find double dissociation, you can see there is the point. I don't want to make an entirely new page for double dissociation because it's just one point. So I think I'm just going to link this block to this page, and I'll probably put a block reference in there, but I haven't decided whether I'm going to do that or not, because I may just include it in this page, but we will see as we move forwards. Now what I need to do is actually go through and have a look at these references, and I should probably do that for the rest of the page because I'm kind of behind on this page, as you can see. Now, for reference, I'm reading this book right here, which is this is the book, and I'm going through and I'm reading a section, reading a paragraph, and then I'm summarizing it in my own words inside of the Obsidian page, which is what you're seeing, and then any reference I'm putting in the blue highlight so I can go through at the back of the book and then grab the reference and bring it forwards. Once I've done that, I will then go through that reference and actually see if it's saying what the book is saying it's saying, so I can double check it and see if there's anything that they've missed or any context that I am missing when I come into here, which is what I'm going to do now. So what I'm going to do is create a collection in Research Rabbit, sync it to Zotero, and then put the references that I've found in the paper inside of the collection so I can see what's actually going on. Add new collection. Name collection. Sync to Zotero. Name folder for Zotero with RR so I know it's synced. Find the new folder in Zotero and move it to the appropriate folder. Now it's time to add a load of papers. What I'm doing is I'm getting the paper link from the book, searching it up in Google Scholar, then getting the citation, putting it into Obsidian, getting a link to the paper, putting it into Obsidian, and then clipping the paper into my Zotero so I have a local PDF file storage version of the paper in my Zotero, nice and stored for me to look at later on. Don't worry, I will show you how I do this in a minute. So what I'm actually doing on my other screen while you're watching that time lapse is I'm going through Google Scholar and grabbing the references and bringing them into Zotero, which you've seen. But it's also syncing with my Research Rabbit collection, which is here. So you can see these are all the papers that I have in Zotero. Now what I'm struggling to find is a paper by this person. So when I click on this paper, I can see, okay, that's the paper that I had. And when I go into the authors, I can then see the author. Or what I could do instead is I can just click directly onto there, and then I can see the author. Then I can go to published work. Then when I'm up into here, I'm then going to change it to recency. Then I'm going to scroll down to 2016, and I can see that's the paper that I had. So that's in there, and then the other paper is down here. So I can see the two papers that I wanted to find, and Google Scholar, for whatever reason, wasn't showing me both of these papers. It was just showing me this one. So this is a way that I can find this paper, and then what I can do is I can click here, and then I can just add to this collection. So I'm now adding it to the collection. You can see, boop, there it is, it's appeared. And then if I hover this down for a second, it is now in here. And you can see, there it is. And a little trick for those of you that can't quite find a reference for something. So this is the reference of the paper that I'm currently looking for, and you can see Google Scholar doesn't actually show me any of the papers that are linked anywhere. So what I've done is I've copied it. I use Bing because I'm on Microsoft Edge. I've copied it into my Bing search engine, and then the first one shows the PubMed. I click into the link, and I've actually already got it up, but there it is. So now I have the paper here, so I actually have a link that I can use inside of my referencing, which you can see if I bring back up Obsidian. I actually have the reference, which is from Google Scholar, but now I have a link that will bring me here in future times when I want to reference back. So how am I actually finding the papers? Well, I'm going into the reference in the book, so this is the reference I'm currently looking for. I don't know how you say that, is Zakas, this one, I've gone into my book and I found the reference in the page and I've typed in this, which is the name of the article. Then Google Scholar has given me this paper. I've double checked that this is the right paper in the book, and it is. So what I'm doing is I'm clicking on Cite, clicking once onto the Harvard method, because that's the method I've always used. I'm doing a copy, then I'm writing out the reference inside of my Obsidian. So I put the author's name and then I add the year, because if they have done more than one paper in this page, then it's going to reference the same thing. So I make sure I put the year in. Then if that author has somehow done 2 papers or more in the year, then I put an A or a B, which you will have seen further up in this page. So once I've done that, I'm then going to colon, open square bracket, then paste the reference inside the square brackets, then normal brackets, right click, copy link, paste. Then I go into the paper, click on the Zotero clipper, and wait for it to clip. And if it doesn't clip, I actually have an extension here. You can see if it's an open paper, this will be green. If it's not, then it won't be a green access paper, but I can click it. And then what that allows me to do is see the PDF paper. And now you can see as I have the PDF, it will allow me to save this to my Zotero. There's the paper that it's just brought in, I think. And you can see now, because of the BibTeX, it's now renamed it and added in the article reference. So I can see what the article was. There's the PDF. And now what I need to do is go through all of these articles that I've pinned in here, which are all in the Obsidian document. You can see all of the papers that are here are all inside of Zotero and Research Rabbit. I'm going to go through, make sure I have the articles, and if I don't have the articles, well, then I need to find the articles. Don't think I know what you're asking. What was that extension? Well, it's called Unpaywall, and what it basically does is anything that is open access, any article that's open access, it will show you that lock or unlock icon when it is available or not, and it should be available on all Chrome browsers. And because I remember all of the names of the plugins perfectly, I actually named the Zotero plugin wrong, so if I go Tools, Add-ons, I come into here, it was actually Zotfile that does the renaming and attaching of files that you saw in the previous clip. Better BibTeX is for something else, and these are the add-ons I have. If you want to add any extensions onto your Zotero, just Google the name of the extension, so Zotfile next to Zotero, and it will allow you to install it onto your computer. Back to the research. First step of the process is to just tag all of the articles that I have. So I'm going to click on the first one, hold shift on my keyboard, click on the last one, and then push my right arrow key. What that does is opens up all of the paper sections, and I can see where I have PDFs. Now I'm going to click on this paper. Yes, I have this paper, so I can put that into waiting. I also have this paper, so I'm going to click. I'm going to hold Control because this is going to speed things up. I can then click through on all of the articles where I have a PDF. Now I can drag them all over to the waiting tag. Now what I'm going to do is highlight them all again, so I can hold shift, go there, and then the left arrow key, which closes them all, and now I can easily see which ones I don't have, so I can do the click, control, drag around, and then I can just add the X on it. Now, I'm not actually going to try and find these because I'm not working on them at the moment. These are just articles. These are just easy tags. But if there are articles when I'm going through my Obsidian page that I want to work on, I will then come into here and then drag them into the working folder, which will then add the tag inside of Research Rabbit, which I'll show you now. So I've decided I want this paper. I want to see this paper again because it's talking about the 2 visual systems, but it's actually saying that they are oversimplified and there potentially is more. So I want to understand that a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is look for this paper. And you can see there it is. So this is the paper that I want, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it into my working RR. I'm also actually going to add an important tag on it because I want it to be important, just so I can see inside of Zotero that I've deemed it as important. I can put it in my important folder in here, but it's not that important inside of Research Rabbit. It's just a notification for me when I'm in Zotero. Okay, this is something that I'm currently looking at. Now, when I go over to Research Rabbit, I'm going to bring it up. You can see inside of here, there isn't anything at the moment. So what I can do is I can resync with Zotero, and I'll also need to go into my working folder and actually resync this one as well. And now you can see all of the papers that are currently in working. So this is the paper that we've just put into the working folder. So it's processes in visual processing. You can see that's where it is. And if we come into this folder, in this collection, and scroll down, we will be able to see that this is the paper that we're currently working on. So I can see that inside of Research Rabbit. So if I want to see papers that are similar, I can then come into Research Rabbit and go forwards. And I can actually see some other papers that I recognize from the other collections that we've already had a look at. Now off camera, I've I've done some more work, and I've actually installed a plugin called Tag Wrangler, which came from this tweet from this individual, and they suggested to use Tag Wrangler to actually organize some of my tags. So when I'm in here, I can now right-click and rename the tags, and this became very useful when I was renaming some of the tags. The next thing is I've removed source paper in the paper template. So if I open up the working notes, you can see this is a paper. I know it's a paper, and I've got rid of the source in the template. So when comparing the old paper template, we had a source section in here, which is where I used to put the source of the note, but now I don't need to do that because of the Zotero 6 update, and I actually have the PDF here, which allows me to open up the paper in Zotero, and this actually goes directly to the highlighted point, and you could do this before, but it didn't work as nice. Now it does, so now I can click on this, and you can see it's opened up the paper, so I don't need the source paper, and it's showing me what highlight I've actually navigated to. Going back into Zotero, there's actually no more exclamation mark because I've got rid of that tag. You can see it's no longer down here. I've deleted it because I don't need it. All of the papers that were in the important tag are either in the working, so in here, there's actually only one of them, and I've actually done that one, so that's going to be going soon, or they've been moved into other collections because I don't really need it, and the same has gone in Research Rabbit because I don't use important anymore. In Research Rabbit, I've moved some collections into different categories. I've actually added a couple more collections and a couple more categories. And you can see the important category from the tag section is now no longer there because I've deleted it. Moving into the research, I've done more research, so previous clip I was on color vision, I now have loads more sections, and the way I manage this is I have sections and I have subheadings of each section so I can easily navigate between the different points when I'm working. I have capital letters for anything that I want to highlight, but not really highlight. It's sort of just a, hey, here's some strengths or here's some limitations. What I also do is I have a bold for any keywords or key points that I may want to explore later on. You may remember earlier on in the video that I had double disassociation highlighted in the other page, the Approaches to Human Cognition page, and this is why it's just like a highlighted point that I may want to backlink at some point, but I'm not sure yet. And something else that was quite interesting, in the book they actually referenced a YouTube video, so you can see here is the video, and what I did is I went onto YouTube, I watched the video, I captured it like I would with all of my other capture notes, I brought the note in, and then I referenced it inside of this page, so the Process in Visual Perception page has a reference to a YouTube video which was actually referenced inside of the book, which I found kind of amusing. The plan now for the rest of the day is to make this page look somewhat coherent and make it make sense before I carry on reading tomorrow. During this part of the process is when I actually start understanding what is going on, because this is essentially the third time I've read through this information, and I'm actually reading it through my own words because I've already written them down. Now, it is certainly not uncommon for me to read a sentence that I wrote in my own words and not really understand what I'm talking about, then go, oh yeah, and then relate it to something that I wrote later on in this note. So what I end up doing is actually getting rid of full sections that I wrote out and combining them with notes that I wrote later on when reading the book, or if it's a paper, it's the same thing. I'll read a point, go, what, that doesn't make sense, then I'll link it with something else, and this is where the processing of the notes actually allow me to condense and converge all of the ideas and thoughts together, so the note is a little bit more cohesive when I read through it again after I've done the processing. And the reason I do it again is because I can normally condense it down even further to make it make even more sense. Now, it can look a little bit depressing sometimes when I see this outline and I realise, oh, I'm not even halfway through, but I've got down to here. So I've processed, so this was a couple of hours work, processed all the way down to 2 visual systems. And what I've done is I've left myself a little notification here, which is just highlighted here, to say, okay, this is where I'm at. And what have I actually done? That's a great question, Danny. Well, I've gone through and I've basically combined different sections together. So if we have a look at some of these paragraphs, you can see there is a reference, it's a footnote reference, and there is another footnote reference. And there was actually 3 sentences here, but what I've done is I've combined the 3 sentences together to create this paragraph, this couple of sentences to explain what's going on. And the difference is, instead of it being essentially bullet pointed ideas or bullet pointed concepts from the book, I've put it into sentences that make sense, so when I'm reading through it, I can understand what's going on. Now, some points that you will have seen in here are actually highlighted, and these are links, and what these are block references, and some of these are related to this page. So if I go in, you can see, if I zoom into the page as well, you'll be able to see it a little bit better. Woohoo! So you can see what I've done is I've done a block reference of binding problem. So the binding problem, which you saw just up here, is now actually block reference, which is what this is here. You can see this is the block reference, not the footnote, the block reference inside of Obsidian, and that's linked here. So if I middle click on my mouse on there, it will take me to this section. Now, in this example, it's fairly close, but if I scroll up the page, binocular disparity is another point, if I middle click again, all the way down on the bottom part of the page. So I haven't actually processed this part of the page yet. If you have a look, this is binocular cues, and when we go all the way down here, binocular cues are actually down in depth perception, but I've only processed up to here. So what I've done is I've done a block reference to this section. So it means when I'm in here, I don't need to put in brackets and explain what binocular disparity is, because I can just hover over and there it is. Now, they are block references in the same page, but what I've actually done, if I scroll up, you can see TMS. Now, what is TMS? I know what that is because it's referenced in another page. So again, I'm going to middle click, and now you can see this is approaches to human cognition. It's a different page, but I've block referenced TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is a type of neuroimaging that's used to measure brain activity, essentially, and I don't want to have to write what TMS is every time, so what I've done is I've block referenced TMS in here, and you can see approaches to human cognition, hashtag the hat, and then I've renamed the reference TMS. So if we come down here, you can see there it is, TMS. Obsidian natively will put in a random number. I've renamed it because I've done it multiple times. Then, because I want to call it TMS, I've got a pipe sign and then TMS. If I change this, if I put an S in there, and you see TSMS, the reference is still there, the block reference is still the same, but I've just changed what it looks like. And I've done the same here, it's exactly the same, but I could change the name if I wanted to, which I've done elsewhere. So you can see up here, I've got RTMS, and it's still actually going to the same block reference because RTMS is still in the same block, but I've just renamed what it looks like so it makes sense in this sentence. How do you create that from scratch? Well, you open up the two brackets like you would normally when referencing anything. You can do a one caret or hat, whatever you call it, to reference something in the page you're in. And if you want to go globally, so reference any block elsewhere, you put the second one in and then you type what you want. So for me, I want TMS. So I've typed in capital TMS, and because that is the name of the block reference, that is the entire block. You can see that's the one that's come up first, and see there it is, TMS, but it's also surfaced everything where TMS is seen. So it's seen there, etc., etc. And I can click on it, and what that's going to do is go, there it is, and if I click out, this is what's going to show, which is why I use that pipe symbol. And I'm just going to put block reference in there so you can see it changes the name. I click off, it says block reference, but it's still going to that TMS block. Now, while I'm rereading over this note to go through some of the references to see what I want to read, I'm actually siphoning off some of the references into different folders. So you can see these are all the references that are in the original page, currently in this collection, which I do have in my Research Rabbit. But what I want to do is make some specific searches inside of Research Rabbit. So I have vision, which is now a new Research Rabbit category. I have color vision, depth perception, motor processing, and visual processing. Well, I haven't done the motor processing yet. So what I've done is I've dragged some of these papers into these folders. So it's literally just a click and drag across. Now, motion processing is something I have in Zotero, but not in Research Rabbit yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go import Zotero collection. Start sync with motion processing, add a name, confirm a couple of papers. Now I have a more specialized collection in Research Rabbit for more specialized searches, so when I go to similar work, I can see what's actually going on recently. So actually everything inside of this collection is fairly recent, so there's no new papers yet. Now it's a case of moving it to the appropriate category. 3 dots, drop down, vision, and we're all sorted. I am fortunate enough to work on 2 screens, so I can snap different things on the screen, so I can actually see 4 different things in total, because I can have 2 on one screen, 2 on another, so Obsidian and Zotero on one screen, Research Rabbit and Google Scholar on the other screen, and actually inside of Obsidian you'll see multiple times I bring up multiple pages so I can see loads of things all at once, which is really, really helpful. Another quick tip for those of you using Zotero to capture your articles: when you have Zotero open on one page and you have a folder open, it will actually clip it to that folder, so you can see that's the default folder set up, and there it is. So it's already gone into this folder. And something else with these tags is there are numbers associated with the tags. Now, because all of these tags are now fairly set for me, because previously in the video I had the exclamation mark, I can now push a number key on my keyboard. So if I go across, this is number 1, this is number 2, 2, I want number 3, so I push number 3 on my keyboard. If I click on there, push number 3, you can see there is the tag. If I push 3 again, it disappears. If I push 2, there's the thumb, etc, etc. So I can add and take away tags using the number key on my keyboard. And now because I have this visual collection up as well, visual category, sorry, up as well, I can move this fast temporal dynamics visual cues to visual processing as well. Now when I hold control on my keyboard whilst still highlighted on this paper, it shows me both the collections this paper is in. Very useful. And to add or change any of the numbers to the tags, if you go over to the tag selector panel, wherever that is located for you, and you right click on a tag, you can assign a color, and that actually gives you the position. So this number 2 is the shortcut for this tag. You can then change the color. I have an emoji set, so I don't see the color because I see the emoji instead. But that's how you can change the number value for each of your tags. Now, as I come to the end of this note, almost having referenced all of the points, you may be asking, why am I actually going through and finding all these references? Well, there are a couple of different things that I actually learned when finding the references. One, obviously I can see there's loads of different references in the page, but I can find different journals that some of these references are from. And two, when I'm going through a lot of the references in the papers, obviously I need to pay attention to the title of the paper and whatever it happens to be, and I actually find other trends that are going on inside of this note. So even though it's about processes in visual perception, consciousness has come up quite a lot in a lot of the papers that I'm referencing, and cognition and subliminal cognition are two other terms that are coming up as well. So I can link cognition, subliminal cognition, consciousness and awareness all with this page later on once I've processed it, and it allows me to grab some of these thoughts together, because actually going through and grabbing these references is not that mentally taxing. So it allows me to think about what this note is and how it relates to other notes while I'm actually doing something that's beneficial. So when I come back to this note, I know what references I'm looking at. And because I pay so much attention to all of the links that I've already made, you know what I just said about consciousness? Well, it's actually already linked to this page, which is why I like the local graph view in Obsidian, so I can actually see consciousness is already linked to processes and visual perception. So that was a confirmation of my thinking inside of Obsidian with just me going through the references. And then cognition is also a page that's already been referenced. Now, when I go up to the top of this page to the links, cognition is there, but consciousness isn't, and that's a different link. So if I go to consciousness, you can see, oh, where is it? I don't know where it is. But you can see here in the page, this is where consciousness, I've actually already linked it. So while I was processing through this note, consciousness was one of those points that just came up to mind. And that's where the link is, which is why it's showing on the graph, because consciousness here is a backlink I've made in one of the paragraphs while I was processing the page. Another little trick that I use inside of my notes, when I find an image or a graph inside of a paper and I take a screenshot, I use Windows-Shift-S on my keyboard to grab a quick snippet. You can use loads of other different things for that, but when I paste it into Obsidian, normally it's quite small. So what I do, you can see there is the pasted image, is I use the pipe symbol and then I add this number after it. And what that does is it changes the size of the image. So if I change that to 500, it's really big. And if I get rid of that entirely, you can see this was the original size of the image, which is a little bit small for me, so I'm going to change that back to 400. Just as another note, for those of you unfamiliar with Obsidian and their block references, you can see here we've got a block reference, a block reference, another block reference, and here we actually have a heading block reference. And the reason this is different, if I actually click to the side and go just over, you can see there's a hash before it. Now this is a heading inside of this page. You could do a heading inside of other pages as well, but what this is actually doing is it's taking everything underneath the heading. So essentially this heading is treated as the block rather than the block reference that we've got in these three, so that everything underneath it, all of the blocks underneath the heading and the references are all shown. So you can link just entire sections of pages rather than just a block. And right at the end of recording this video, Obsidian released an update with lots of small patches which they love to share, but you can see here now we have note blocks. This is a quote block as was, and these are note blocks. These are different, so they have an icon next to them than the word. So all of these words are the different words associated with this specific icon. You can see this in the Obsidian help vault, which you can see down here. You can bring that up. But what these are, if I come into here, is exclamation mark note. So if I change the note for abstract or summary or TLDR, then this icon and this color scheme will show. If it's info or to do, then this will show, etc., etc., all the way down. Then I can add in words underneath, just like I would with a quote block, as you can see up here, but it shows in a note block like this. Now, something else we can do, if we go next to here and put a plus, what that will do is it will default the note block to open, but it does mean when I click it, it will shut it. Then if I go into the code block and put a minus next to this this block, I guess you'd say, it defaults shut, and then you can click it open. Very nice additional feature for the Obsidian update. So what am I left with after all of this work? Well, before I get to that, I do want to cover something with the footnotes. You can see if I go over to rods, which is a block reference, you can see there is Sano 18, that is the footnote. Now I could use inline footnotes instead, so this doesn't appear in here, but it does give me a limitation in that I can't add all of the other information I want inside of the footnote, or I'd have to put it inside of the actual words, which makes the reading much harder. So that is an update I'm waiting for in Obsidian, but this is how I'm doing footnotes rather than inline, for those of you that do understand what I'm talking about. For those of you that don't, just forget I just said that. So I have the synopsis at the top, which basically covers the sections of the page. The two streams, the two visual streams, which is a reference, a heading reference to that section. Then I have the color perception, which is the color vision section, and then the depth perception, which is the depth perception section. Having the synopsis at the top of the page means whenever I do have a block reference like depth perception, I will be able to see process and visual perception and then exactly what this page is telling me to make search and finding things much easier to make sure that I'm actually going to the right page. Then if I go to the side, you can see there is the outline. The outline is much more condensed than it was to start with, as I'm sure you can see. Now when I scroll down, right at the top of each section, so vision and the brain, this section and this section are essentially condensed versions of all of the different subsections underneath it. So I get a summary of whatever this outline is before I go down. This is one useful when I'm going through the outline and I just want to pick up certain points. So what was the ventral stream? Oh, that's what it was. Or what's this? Oh, that's what it is. And also this serves as easy for me to say, this serves as a synopsis for the section. So I have a synopsis at the top of the page, but I also have a synopsis for each of the outline sections. So color vision, depth perception, etc. So if I go down here, here is the synopsis here. Now this is much larger than the other one because there's much more inside of depth perception, and then I can go to monocular cues, etc., etc. Now you may be able to see the atomic note style structure still here because depth perception could be a note itself. So could color vision, so could other things, but I've kept it all in one place so I can go through this one page very easily, very quickly to see everything that is going on. Now when I go into the reading view and I start navigating around these pages, you can see this is what you'll see in Obsidian Publish, a link in description. There is a quote. You'll see all of the different footnotes and the references are in here, all of the different links are in here, and when I go all the way down to the references, here are all the links. All the appropriate links, all the references, everything that's going on. So I've got 106 on this page. And for those of you that do want to know what's going on, here is my Research Rabbit public collection of this page. Most, not all, most of the references will be in there. So feel free to explore the references, explore the page, or just copy some of the workflow that I have used to mount this research. And the next video will be something other than visual perception, maybe memory. We will see.